So when we have numbers, let's say I have a number 453, we can break it down into its place values and its periods. So a period is a string of three numbers like this. And in this instance, since there's no other numbers to the left or right, this is going to be my ones period. And each of these numbers can be broken into its own separate part. So where the 3 is going to be the ones. So I'm just going to put an O right above it, or the one spot. The 5 is in the 10 spot. I'll put a T. And the 4 is in the 100 spot. I'm going to put an H. So I'm going to extend this numbers out, and after we do one period, we put a comma, and then we can then extend it. So I can put, let's say, a 7, and this will now become its own period. Even with it only being one number, it's still its own period because it's in a different section from the ones. So this will be 1,000, and this period is the thousands. So there's a common rule when we're doing periods. So the first one will always be the name of the period. So this is the thousands, and this is 1,000. And then if I were to add another number, the 4, this will be then the 10,000s, or I'll put T for 10 and then 1,000. And then if I were to put an 8 to the left of that, that would be the 100,000. So the furthest number to the left in a period is the hundreds, and then that period name. In the middle is going to be 10, and then that period name. And then the first number, or the far right number, is going to be the period name itself. And I'm going to extend this to the next higher period. So I'm going to write down three numbers. I say 923. So this is the million. And if you were to guess, for the 3, since it's the far right one, it's going to hold its own period name. So it's going to be M. And then the place value name for 2, if you remember, is going to be 10 and then million, or 10 then place or period name. And then the one on the far left is going to be that 100 then million. And then we can do one more section. This section is called the billions. And if you remember the pattern, I'm going to get billion, 10 billion, and then 100 billion. So this does extend to the right. And let's say I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So to the right, or these numbers, are going to be called the decimals. And this will extend no matter how many numbers you have to the right of the one spot. So this follows a similar naming convention to the ones, so it goes ones, tens, hundreds. It's actually going to skip the one spot and go straight to tens, and then hundreds, thousands, and then 10,000s. So it's going to carry the same naming convention. However, at the end of each name, so for this first 10 spot, this is going to be tenths. And for the hundreds, it is actually going to be hundredths. And if you could guess the last one for thousandths, it's going to be thousandths. So I'm going to quickly erase all of this, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to write out a number, and then we're going to place it in this convention, breaking it apart in its placeholders and its periods. So I'll have a number 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. So how we read these numbers is we're going to go starting from the right to the left and break them into threes. So I can group up starting from 6. So I got 6, 5, 4. That's a group of 3. And then I had 2 groups after that, but even if it's not 3, as long as there's at least one number after it, it's still going to be its new group. And this is going to be the thousands. And this is going to be the ones. So when you're reading it, your first group starting from right to left is going to be your ones, and then thousands, and then so on and so forth. And when you have just two numbers or one number filling up a section, you can write the rest as zeros if you want to, if it makes it easier. So now I'm going to put the comma to show that there are two different periods, and then we're going to write the placeholders. So we have the ones, the tens, hundreds, thousands, and 10,000s. So I'm going to quickly do one last example of this. So I'm going to write the numbers 5, 0, 6, 1, 0, 3, 0, 1, 2. And then so all the numbers to the right of this decimal are going to be placed in its own category. And remember, it's the decimals. So I'm just going to label it as D. And then I'm going to count from the period or the decimal to the left. So 3, 0, 1, place that in its own. And then 5, 0, 6, place that in its own period. And the first one, 3, 0, 1, is going to be the ones. I'm going to write it as a O. And then the 5, 0, 6, since it's to the left of the ones, it's going to be the thousands. Do a T. And then the 5 is going to be 100,000. The 0 is going to be 10,000. The 6 is going to be the thousands. This 1 is going to be the hundreds. This 0 is going to be the tens. And this 3 is going to be the ones. And then if you remember the naming convention for the decimals, you start at the tens instead of the zeros. And then you add that THS to the N. So this 0, instead of being tens, is going to be tenths. This 1, instead of being 100, it's going to be hundredths. And this 2, instead of being thousands, is going to be thousandths. So I'm going to erase this, and we're going to do an example using words, and then taking that words and bring it into a numerical meaning. So I have this number written out, and we're going to put it into numerical form. So I'm going to start with the 4 million. So since there's no 100 or any number bigger than it, I'm just going to write down the 4, and then I'm going to place it in its own period. M for million, and then I'm going to go to the next one. So the way it's going to be structured is you'll have a number in the hundred spot, 1 through 9. In this instance, I have 2. I'm going to write that down. And then I know it's 1,000 since at the end it says 1,000, so I'm going to write 100,000 above it, and then put it in its own period since I have another number after that. And then they will combine the tens and one spot into one number. So in this example, it's going to be 58. That 50 is 5 in the 10 spot, so we got 10,000. And then that 8 is going to be in the thousands spot for the thousands period. And then we're going to do this one more time. So I have 463. So I have that 4 in the 100 spot, and then that 63, so I can break that up. 60 is going to be 6 in the 10 spot, and that 3 is going to be 3 in the 1 spot, all for the ones period. And then the way decimals are set up, if you remember, they're one place value over, starting from 10. So we still write from left to right as we were. So this 900 is actually going to represent the 10th spot. So write the 9, the T for the 10th spot, and then the 20 is going to be after that. And the 20 will represent the 100th spot. And then since 20 ends in a 0, I'll put the 0 for the 1000th spot, and then I'll put it in its own period for decimal. And that'll be the example. The last part of this section is rounding, and it's to help make numbers easier to read. So we usually use this for larger numbers. So an example of this would be if I want to round 1053. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna round to the 100 spot, and when we round to the 100 spot, we look one spot over to the ones, and then we look at that number. So if it's a number 1 through 4, you're going to round down, which means you're gonna keep your current number. And if it's a number 5 through 9, you're going to round up or to the. So for this 1053, after rounding, it'll just be 1050. And then if I were to do an example of rounding up, let's say at a number 967, and then I'm going to round that 100 spot again. So I'm going to look one over to the one spot, and it is a number 5 through 9. So that means we're going to round up, and when I round up, I'm going to get a final answer of 970. That'll be the video. So if you enjoyed it, please leave any comments on how to improve the content, and have a good day.